The massive chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with angry voices. Representatives from 47 different species filled the curved seats that rose up like a giant bowl. Their various forms created a strange sight. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and a few glowed with their own light. But today, they all shared the same emotion. Fear. Jiwoo sat in the small human section, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations. Around her, aliens twice her size waved their arms and made loud noises. Some pointed at her with claws or tentacles. She did not move. The Nexarian Council leader, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, struck a crystal bell. The sound rang out clear and sharp. Slowly, the noise died down. "We are here because of a serious problem," the leader said. His voice carried to every corner through the room's speakers. "The humans have broken the containment treaty of 2290. They have spread across the galaxy without permission." Angry sounds filled the room again. The Valkyrian representative, who looked like a giant mantis, clicked his mandibles loudly. They were supposed to stay in their small corner of space. We gave them 20 systems. That should have been enough for any reasonable species. Jiwoo finally stood up. Her movement was so quiet that few noticed at first. But gradually the room grew silent. All eyes turned to the small human woman. "May I speak?" she asked politely. The council leader's 4 arms moved in what might have been surprise. "You wish to defend your species' illegal actions?" "I wish to inform the council of the truth," Jiwoo replied. Her voice was calm and clear. The leader gestured for her to continue. Jiwoo walked to the center of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. "The containment treaty was signed 97 years ago," she began. "At that time, you believed humans lived on only a few hundred worlds. You thought you were being generous by giving us 20 systems." She paused and looked around the room. Many of the aliens leaned forward to hear better, but humans had already colonized over 300 worlds by then. The silence broke instantly. Voices rose in shock and anger. The Zephyrian representative, a being made of living crystal, chimed loudly. "Impossible! Our scouts would have found them." Jiwoo smiled slightly. "Your scouts found exactly what we wanted them to find." The council leader struck his bell again. When quiet returned, he asked, "Are you saying humans have been lying to this council for almost a century?" "No," Jiwoo said. "We simply never told you the whole truth. You never asked the right questions." She activated a small device in her hand. Suddenly, the air above the chamber filled with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of small blue dots appeared scattered across hundreds of star systems. "Each blue dot represents a human colony," Jiwoo explained. "As of today, we have settlements on 2,437 worlds." The chamber erupted in chaos. Several representatives stood up so quickly they knocked over their chairs. The Arcturian delegate, a being with too many eyes, made a sound like breaking glass. "This is an act of war." "Is it?" Jiwoo asked calmly. "We have never attacked any council species. We have never claimed ownership of inhabited worlds. We have never interfered with your trade routes." The Valkyrian clicked his mandibles again. "You have violated the treaty." The treaty stated that humans could not establish colonies outside our designated zone without council permission, Jiwoo replied. "But it only applied to worlds that the council knew about. Most of our colonies are on worlds you have never surveyed." The council leader's silver skin seemed to darken. "Explain," Jiwoo gestured to the map. "The council focuses on systems with rare resources or strategic value. You ignore worlds that seem worthless, too hot, too cold, too small, or too dangerous. But humans are very good at making worthless worlds valuable." She pointed to several blue dots. "This colony exists in a system you marked as sterile because it has high radiation. We developed technology to use that radiation as an energy source. This one is on a world you called Frozen Wasteland. We built underground cities powered by geothermal energy." The room had grown quiet again. The alien stared at the map with what looked like growing understanding. "And this," Jiwoo continued, pointing to a cluster of blue dots, "is in the void sector, which you declared off limits because of gravitational anomalies. We learned to use those anomalies for faster-than-light travel." The Nexarian leader leaned forward. "How long have you been planning this deception?" "It was not deception," Jiwoo said. "It was survival. When humans first met the council, we learned that every species was required to stay in assigned territories. We also learned what happened to species that grew too large or too powerful." She gestured toward an empty section of seats. The hegemony once controlled 50 systems. The collective had colonies on 100 worlds. Where are they now? No one answered. Everyone knew the hegemony had been relocated to a few barren planets. The collective had been broken apart and scattered. Humans decided that would not happen to us. Jiwoo continued. So we prepared. The Zephyrian representative chimed softly. Prepared for what? For this moment. Jiwoo looked around the chamber. For the day when the council would try to contain us and we would be ready to say no. The silence stretched on. Finally, the council leader spoke. The council hereby issues an immediate order for all human colonies outside the designated zone to be abandoned within 1 standard year. Jiwoo shook her head. I am afraid that will not be possible. You refuse a direct order from the Galactic Council? The colonies cannot be abandoned because they contain over 40 billion human citizens. And they are defended. The map above the chamber changed. Now it showed red dots mixed with the blue ones. There were thousands of them. Each red dot represents a defensive station or fleet, Jiwoo explained. We have been building them for decades. Any attempt to force humans from their homes will be met with resistance. The Arcturian delegate stood up, all his eyes focusing on Jiwoo. You threaten war against the council? We threaten nothing, Jiwoo replied. We simply state facts. Humans will defend their homes and their freedom. We hope the council will choose wisdom over conflict. The council leader's forearms moved in complex patterns, a sign of deep thought among his people. What do humans want? Jiwoo smiled. The same thing every species wants. The right to live, to grow, and to reach for the stars. We do not wish to conquer anyone. We do not wish to control the council. We simply wish to exist without limits imposed by others. She looked around the chamber one more time. The moment to contain humanity is already past. It passed long before the treaty was signed. Now the question is, will the council adapt to the new reality, or will it try to fight a war it cannot win? The chamber fell silent. Outside the great windows, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had just learned it was no longer the same as it had been that morning. Jiwoo walked back to her seat, her footsteps the only sound in the vast room. Behind her, the map still showed thousands of blue and red dots, proof that humanity had grown far beyond anyone's ability to contain. The age of human expansion was not beginning. It had been going on for decades. The council was only now discovering what the rest of the galaxy would soon learn. When humans decided to reach for the stars, nothing could stop them. 50 years earlier, Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Dawn. Through the wide windows he could see their destination, a brown and gray planet that orbited a dying star. The council had marked it as worthless in their star charts. Perfect. Are you sure about this? Asked Yujin, his second-in-command. She was young then, barely 30, with nervous energy that made her pace around the bridge. If the council finds us here, they won't, Dong-hyun said calmly. He was a big man with steady hands and patient eyes. Look at their survey report. High radiation, unstable geology, no valuable resources. They spent less than a day scanning the system. The ship shook slightly as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the clouds they could see the surface. Cracked rocks, steaming vents, and rivers of what looked like liquid metal. It looks like hell, muttered Wu Bin from his engineering station. He was the youngest of the three, but his mind worked with machines better than anyone Dong-hyun had ever met. Hell can be made into heaven with the right tools, Dong-hyun replied. They landed in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. The radiation was indeed high, but not deadly with proper shielding. The unstable geology meant geothermal power sources everywhere, and the worthless liquid metal rivers were actually flowing streams of rare elements that the council's quick scan had missed. Within a month, they had built the first underground habitat. Within a year, they had 5,000 people living in comfortable homes beneath the planet's surface. The radiation that made the council avoid this world powered their cities and factories. Send the message, Dong-hyun told Yujin on the anniversary of their landing. She activated the hidden transmitter that could reach Earth without being detected by council monitoring stations. The message was simple. First colony established. Send more ships. By then, Yujin had stopped pacing. She had found her calling running supply ships between hidden colonies, always staying one step ahead of council patrols. Her small, fast ships could outrun anything the council had. and her knowledge of asteroid fields and nebula gave her hiding places throughout the galaxy. The trick, she explained to new smuggler captains, is to never look like what you are. Paint your ship to look like a council survey vessel. Learn their communication codes. Act bored when they scan you. They see what they expect to see. She was right. In 10 years of running the blockade, Yujin's ships were never caught. She built a network of hidden supply routes that connected dozens of secret colonies. Her captains learned to use gravitational anomalies, solar storms, and quantum fluctuations to hide their movements. Meanwhile, Wu Bin had become the human species' greatest weapon against discovery. His engineering genius had created stealth, technology that made human ships nearly invisible to council sensors. Every species has different ways of seeing, he explained to his team as they worked on the latest ship designs. Nexarians use gravitational sensors, Zephyrians detect energy patterns, Arcturians track heat signatures, but none of them look for everything at the same time. His ships used adaptive hulls that could change their energy signature, heat output, and gravitational footprint. To Nexarian sensors, they looked like space debris. To Zephyrian detectors, they seemed like background radiation. To Arcturian scanners, they appeared to be cold asteroids. "We are not trying to be invisible," Wu Bin said. "We are trying to be uninteresting." The strategy worked perfectly. Council patrol ships would scan a human vessel and see exactly what their sensors expected to find in that location, nothing worth investigating. But the most important member of the early colonization effort was So Young. While others built colonies and ran supplies, she infiltrated the council's communication networks. She was small and quiet, with the kind of face that people forgot quickly. Perfect for intelligence work. She got a job as a translator in the council's diplomatic corps, a position that gave her access to encrypted messages between council species. "Most aliens think all humans look the same," she told her handlers during a secret meeting on a supply station hidden inside an asteroid. "They also think we are too primitive to understand their technology. Both assumptions make my job easier." For 20 years, So Young fed information to human colonies. She warned them when council ships were planning surveys of nearby systems. She provided intelligence about council military capabilities and political tensions. Most importantly, she learned that the council was far weaker than they pretended. "Half the member species hate each other," she reported. "The Nexarians think the Zephyrians are planning to break away from the council. The Arcturians are convinced the Valkyrians are secretly building a fleet. Everyone is watching everyone else for signs of betrayal." This intelligence helped human leaders understand that the council stayed in power through fear and division, not strength. The great galactic government that seemed so mighty was actually fragile. As the years passed, the secret network grew. Donghyun's worthless planet became the capital of a dozen hidden worlds. Yujin's smuggling operation expanded into a fleet of hundreds of ships. Wu Bin's stealth technology was installed on everything from colony ships to orbital defense platforms. So Young's intelligence network gave humans advance warning of every council move. But the most important discovery came by accident. A human survey ship investigating an empty system found the ruins of an ancient civilization. The builders had been gone for millions of years, but their technology was still functional. "It's incredible," reported the expedition leader. "Their computers are still running. Their power systems still work. And their weapons—" He paused, his voice filled with awe. "Their weapons are beyond anything the council has." The discovery changed everything. Human scientists began studying ancient technology, learning to adapt it for their own use. They found that the ancients had built their civilization on principles of cooperation and exploration, exactly the opposite of the council's system of control and limitation. More importantly, they learned that the ancients had left the galaxy, not because they were conquered, but because they had grown beyond the need for physical worlds. They had evolved into beings of pure energy, leaving their technology behind for anyone wise enough to find and use it. "They left it for us," Donghyun said during a meeting of human leaders. He was older now, his hair gray, but his eyes still held the same steady determination. "They left it for any species that chose cooperation over domination, exploration over control. The ancient technology gave humans capabilities that far exceeded anything the council possessed. Ships that could travel faster than light without using the council's carefully controlled jump gates. Weapons that could disable entire fleets without killing anyone. communication systems that could reach across the galaxy instantly. But perhaps most importantly, the ancient databases contained detailed information about every species in the galaxy, including many that the Council had never discovered or had chosen to ignore. The Council represents fewer than half the intelligent species in this galaxy, so Young reported after analyzing the ancient records. There are hundreds of civilizations out there that they either don't know about or have written off as primitive. Human exploration ships began making contact with these primitive species. They found civilizations that had been avoiding the Council for centuries, hiding in remote systems or using technology the Council didn't understand. Many were far older and more advanced than any Council member species. They've been waiting, Eugen reported after returning from a diplomatic mission to a hidden civilization in the Galactic Rim, waiting for someone to stand up to the Council. Waiting for a species that would treat them as equals instead of trying to control them. By the time Jiwoo stood before the Council to reveal humanity's expansion, the secret was far bigger than even she knew. Humans had not just built a hidden empire of colonies and fleets. They had become the center of a shadow alliance that included dozens of species the Council had never heard of. The network, that began with Donghyun's single colony on a worthless world, had grown into something that spanned the galaxy, and at its heart was a simple human idea that the ancients had shared. Freedom was not something to be granted by others, but something to be claimed by those brave enough to reach for the stars. The moment for containing humanity had not passed when Jiwoo spoke to the Council. It had passed 50 years earlier, when the first human colonists landed on a planet the Council thought was too worthless to visit. Everything that followed was just the natural result of human determination, meeting unlimited possibilities. The Council's ultimatum reached every human colony within hours of Jiwoo's revelation. 1 year to abandon all settlements outside the designated zone, or face appropriate enforcement action. In the command center of New Haven, humanity's largest hidden colony, Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo read the message without expression. "They really think we'll just pack up and leave," said Commander Ara, his tactical officer. She was studying battle reports from the last time the Council had enforced containment on a growing species. The hegemony tried to fight. Their worlds were bombarded from orbit. 30 billion dead. The hegemony made mistakes, Hyunwoo replied calmly. He was a tall man with graying hair and scars from his years as a colony ship captain. They fought the Council's kind of war. Ship-to-ship battles in open space. Predictable tactics. They let themselves be surrounded and destroyed. Ara pulled up a tactical display showing Council fleet movements. Red icons were moving toward human space from a dozen directions. Intelligence reports indicate they're assembling the largest fleet in Council history. "Over 2,000 warships, and how many ships do we have?" asked Junho from his pilot station. He was young, maybe 25, with the quick reflexes that made him perfect for flying the new experimental fighters. "Officially, none," Hyunwoo said with a slight smile. "Humans are not allowed to have military vessels under the treaty. We only have civilian ships for transportation and supply." The smile grew wider. Of course, the treaty was written before humans learned how to make civilian ships that could outfight Council warships. He activated the main display. The room filled with a three-dimensional map showing human colonies and their defenses. What had looked like simple trading posts and mining stations now revealed their true nature. Each civilian facility was actually a heavily armed fortress. "The Council thinks in terms of big fleets and massive battles," Ara explained to the younger officers. "They like to line up their ships and fire until someone surrenders. It's worked for them for centuries. But we've been preparing for a different kind of war," added Hyunwoo. "One where small, fast ships hit hard and disappear. Where every asteroid could be hiding a weapons platform. Where the enemy never knows where the next attack will come from." The first test came sooner than expected. A Council patrol fleet of 50 ships approached the outer edge of human territory, heading for a colony world called Haven's Rest. Their mission was simple: evacuate the humans or destroy the settlement. Junho led the response in his experimental fighter. It was small, barely large enough for one person, but it used ancient technology adapted by human engineers. While Council ships relied on massive engines and thick armor, human fighters were built for speed and stealth. Approaching Council fleet, Junho reported over the comm. They're in standard formation. Big ships in front, smaller vessels protecting the flanks, just like the training simulations. Remember, Aira's voice came through his helmet, hit and run. Don't try to destroy them all. Just make them realize they're not safe. The Council Admiral probably never saw what hit him. Junho's fighter appeared on sensors for just a few seconds, long enough to launch a barrage of missiles that crippled the flagship's engines. By the time the Council ships could respond, the human fighter had vanished back into the asteroid field. What was that? Demanded the Nexarian Admiral, his forearms gesturing frantically at his tactical display. How can such a small ship carry weapons that powerful? His officers had no answer. Their sensors showed empty space where the attacker had been moments before. The harassment continued for hours. Human fighters would appear without warning, strike at vulnerable points, then disappear before the Council ships could react. They targeted engines, weapon systems, and communication arrays, disabling rather than destroying, but making it clear that they could have killed everyone if they chose to. "Admiral," reported the Council fleet's tactical officer, "we've lost main engines on 12 ships, weapons on 23, and communications on nearly half the fleet. But our casualties are minimal. They're being careful not to kill anyone." The Nexarian Admiral's silver skin darkened with confusion. Why would they show restraint? They could have destroyed us by now. The answer came from an unexpected source. The colony they had come to evacuate sent them a message. "Council fleet, you are welcome to land and discuss terms. We have medical facilities available for your wounded. We bear you no ill will and wish to resolve this peacefully." Meanwhile, similar scenes were playing out across human space. Council fleets approaching other colonies found themselves harassed by invisible attackers who struck without warning and vanished without trace. But in every case, the humans offered medical aid, supplies, and negotiation rather than death. The strategy was working better than anyone had hoped. The Council had expected humans to fight like every other species, with pride and fury, making them easy to defeat or destroy. Instead, they found an enemy that was impossible to pin down, impossible to intimidate, and strangely unwilling to kill. "They're fighting like ghosts," reported another Council Admiral after his fleet was forced to retreat from a human system. "We can't catch them, we can't predict them, and we can't make them angry enough to do something stupid." Back in the command center on New Haven, Mi Young was coordinating the diplomatic aspects of the conflict. She was a small woman with a gentle manner that hid a sharp intelligence and absolute determination. "The key is to make them question why they're fighting," she explained to a meeting of human colony leaders. "Every Council species joined because they were afraid of being conquered. But we're showing them that humans don't conquer. We defend and we offer friendship to those who want it." Her strategy was proving successful. Several Council member species had begun questioning orders to attack human colonies. The Vorthon, a peaceful species that had joined the Council for protection, officially requested that their ships be withdrawn from anti-human operations. "We see no threat from human expansion," their representative announced. "They have not attacked any of our worlds, interfered with our trade, or made any hostile moves toward our people. We will not participate in what appears to be unprovoked aggression." The Nexarian Council leader was furious. They signed the Mutual Defense Accord. They are required to participate in enforcement actions. "Against actual threats," the Vorthon replied calmly. "We have reviewed all intelligence reports. Humans have never attacked a Council member species. They have never claimed territory belonging to others. Their only crime is growing beyond the limits we set for them." Other species began to agree. The war that was supposed to be a quick enforcement action was turning into a political disaster for the Council's leadership. But the real turning point came when the Council attempted a full assault on New Haven itself. They assembled their most powerful fleet, 300 warships including their newest dreadnoughts, and approached the human capital directly. Hyunwoo was ready for them. The space around New Haven was filled with weapons platforms disguised as mining equipment, fighter squadrons hidden in asteroid bases, and defensive systems based on ancient technology that the Council had never encountered. "All stations, this is Admiral Hyunwoo," he broadcast as the Council fleet entered the system. "Remember, we are not here to destroy them. We are here to teach them that some things cannot be conquered." The battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of massive ships trading fire until one side was destroyed, it was a complex dance of small, fast human vessels darting between huge, slow Council dreadnoughts. Every time the Council ships tried to form up for a coordinated attack, human fighters would strike at their formation, forcing them to break apart. The ancient weapons technology made the difference. Human ships could fire through shields that would stop normal weapons. Their missiles could change direction in flight, making them almost impossible to intercept. Their electronic warfare systems could jam Council communications and sensors at will. Within 6 hours, the Council fleet was in full retreat. They had lost no ships, but nearly every vessel was damaged and many were barely functional. The humans had proven they could have destroyed the entire fleet if they chose to, but had again shown restraint. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Council fleet," came a transmission as the damaged ships limped away. We request permission to recover our wounded and repair our ships." "Permission granted," Hyunwoo replied immediately. "New Haven medical facilities are at your disposal. We bear you no ill will." The Nexarian admiral who led the attack later said it was the most disturbing moment of his long military career. "They had us helpless. They could have destroyed us all. But instead, they offered to heal our wounded and repair our ships. What kind of enemy shows such mercy?" Word of the battle spread across the galaxy within days. The mighty Council fleet, sent to crush human resistance, had been defeated by an enemy that refused to kill them. Species that had lived in fear of the Council for centuries began to ask new questions. If humans could defeat the Council's best fleet without destroying it, what did that say about the Council's power? If humans offered medical aid to enemies who had come to destroy them, what did that say about human intentions? Most importantly, if humans could grow strong enough to defend themselves while the defeat at New Haven changed everything. Within weeks of the failed assault, reports began flooding into Council headquarters from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in systems where they had never been seen before. But these were not invasion fleets. They were liberation forces. Admiral Sung Ho commanded the first liberation fleet from his flagship, Freedom's Dawn. He was a veteran of the early colony wars, a quiet man who had learned strategy from studying both human history and alien mistakes. His mission was unlike any military operation in galactic history. "Remember," he told his captains during their final briefing, "we are not conquerors. We are liberators. Every species we encounter is a potential ally, not a subject. Our job is to offer choice, not impose our will." The fleet's first target was the Keth system, where a species called the Miners had been enslaved by the Velkarian Empire for over 2 centuries. Council records listed them as voluntary laborers, but human intelligence knew better. The Keth were a peaceful people who had been mining rare crystals from their asteroid belt when the Velkarians arrived. The aliens had promised protection and technology in exchange for mining rights. Instead, they had trapped the Keth in a system of debt that could never be paid off, forcing them to work in dangerous conditions for barely enough food to survive. When Sung Ho's ships entered the system, the Velkarian overseers immediately called for Council reinforcements. But the human admiral sent a different message, broadcast on all frequencies so everyone could hear. "People of Keth, this is Admiral Seung Ho of the Human Liberation Fleet. We come not as conquerors but as friends. If you wish to remain under Velkarian protection, we will respect that choice. If you wish to be free, we will help you achieve that freedom. The choice is yours." The response was immediate. Keth miners across the asteroid belt began shutting down their equipment and sealing themselves into their shelters. They had never been given a choice before, and they were choosing freedom. The Velkarian garrison tried to force the miners back to work, but found their path blocked by human marines led by Commander Min-Soo. He was a small, wiry man who had trained in both human military tactics and alien psychology. "Stand down," Min-Soo told the Velkarian commander. "The Keth have chosen. Respect their decision. These are our workers." The Velkarian clicked his mandibles angrily. "They have contracts." "Contracts signed under duress are not valid," Min-Soo replied calmly. "The Keth are free to leave at any time. We are here to ensure they can exercise that right safely." The standoff lasted 3 days. The Velkarians called for reinforcements, but the Council was too busy dealing with similar situations in a dozen other systems. Human liberation fleets were offering freedom to enslaved species across the galaxy, and the old order was crumbling. Meanwhile, Dr. Yunji was making discoveries that would change galactic history. She was a xenoarchaeologist who specialized in ancient civilizations. Her team had been studying ruins left by the precursors, the mysterious race that had vanished millions of years before any Current species evolved. Look at this, she told her research team as they explored a newly discovered precursor facility hidden in a dead star system. These aren't just ruins. This whole station is still active. The facility was enormous, larger than most space stations built by current galactic civilizations. But it was clearly ancient, covered with writings in languages that had been extinct for eons. More importantly, it was still functioning. The power systems are still online, reported her engineering assistant. Not just online, that they're running at full capacity. Whatever the precursors used for energy, it doesn't degrade over time. Yunji's team spent months exploring the facility. What they found revolutionized human understanding of galactic history. The precursors had not simply disappeared. They had been preparing for something. The station was full of technology, star charts, and databases that painted a picture of a galaxy very different from the one controlled by the Council. They knew, Yunji reported to human leadership during an encrypted transmission. The precursors knew that the galaxy would eventually be dominated by species that chose control over cooperation. This facility, and dozens like it, were left behind as resources for any species wise enough to find them and strong enough to use them properly. The technology was incredible. The precursors had developed faster-than-light travel that didn't require the jump gates controlled by the Council. Their weapons could disable entire fleets without harming the crews. Their manufacturing systems could build anything from starships to medical equipment, using nothing but raw energy and basic matter. But most importantly, they had left behind detailed records of every species in the galaxy, including many that the Council had either never discovered or had classified as extinct or primitive. There are over 300 intelligent species in this galaxy, Yunji reported. The Council knows about less than 50. The rest have been hiding, waiting, or developing in isolation. Human diplomats led by Yejin began making contact with these hidden civilizations. She was a patient woman who understood that trust took time to build, especially among species that had spent centuries avoiding galactic politics. Her first contact was with the Wanderers, a nomadic species that lived on generation ships traveling between star systems. The Council had classified them as primitive spacers because they had no permanent worlds. In reality, they were master engineers who had built ships capable of sustaining entire civilizations for thousands of years. We know of humans, the Wanderer Elder told Yejin during their first meeting in the neutral space between systems. Your reputation for keeping promises has reached even us. But why should we trust you more than we trusted the Council? Because we're not asking you to change, Yejin replied. We're offering alliance, not absorption. Keep your ships, keep your freedom, keep your independence. All we ask is friendship and mutual aid against those who would control both of us. The Wanderers agreed to an alliance within months. Their ships began sharing intelligence about Council movements, and their engineers started collaborating with human scientists on new technologies. Similar contacts were made across the galaxy. The shell builders who lived in modified asteroids and were master miners. The current riders who existed as pure energy and could travel through space faster than any physical ship. The deep dwellers who had built an entire civilization in the gas clouds between stars. Each species brought new capabilities to the growing alliance. But more importantly, each one represented proof that the Council's vision of galactic order was fatally flawed. The galaxy was far more diverse, far more creative, and far more free than the Council's rigid hierarchy could accommodate. The turning point came when a full Council fleet attempted to retake the Keth system and found themselves facing not just human ships, but vessels from 6 different species working together. The Wanderer ships provided reconnaissance. The shell builders had built hidden weapons platforms in the asteroids, and the current riders disrupted Council communications by interfering with their energy systems. This is impossible, transmitted the Council fleet commander. Our intelligence report said humans were operating alone. Your intelligence was wrong, replied Admiral Sung-ho. Humans have many friends. We suggest you withdraw before this situation escalates further. The Council fleet withdrew, but the implications were staggering. Humanity was not just a single species that had grown beyond its assigned boundaries. It was the center of a shadow alliance that included civilizations the Council had never known existed. Back on Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being held around the clock. The carefully maintained balance of power that had kept the Council in control for centuries was collapsing. How many ships do they have? demanded the council leader. Unknown, replied his intelligence chief. Our estimates of human capabilities have been wrong from the beginning. Now they have allies we never knew existed. We could be facing anything from hundreds to thousands of vessels. And our member species, 7 have formally withdrawn from military operations against humans. 12 more have requested clarification of the legal basis for the war. 3 have opened diplomatic communications with human colonies. The council leader's forearms moved in patterns of distress. What do the humans want? That's the most disturbing part, his aide replied. They don't seem to want anything we have. They're not demanding territory, resources, or political control. They're offering protection to species that want to leave our sphere of influence, but they're not forcing anyone to join them. This was the council's greatest fear realized. They had built their power on the assumption that every species wanted what they had: protection, stability, and a place in the galactic order. But humans were offering something different: the chance to grow, explore, and choose their own destiny. As reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy, it became clear that the old order was ending. The Council's attempt to contain humanity had triggered something far larger, a galactic awakening that would reshape the entire structure of interstellar civilization. The moment had not just passed for containing humans, the moment had passed for the entire system of control and limitation. That the 6 months after the Council's failed ultimatum, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. In the reformed chambers on Nexus Prime, representatives from over 200 species filled seats that had once held only 47. The curved walls had been expanded to accommodate the new delegates, and translation systems worked overtime to handle languages the Council had never encountered. Sang-Woo stood at the center podium, where the old Council leader once held court. He was not young. His hair was silver, and his face showed the lines of decades spent building humanity's hidden empire. But his voice was strong as he addressed the new galactic cooperative. "We gather not as rulers and subjects," he began, "but as equals sharing one galaxy. The old system of control and limitation has ended. Today we begin something unprecedented in galactic history, a true democracy of species." In the human section, Bora watched with satisfaction. She had been chosen to represent humanity on the new council, but her job was very different from what the old representatives had done. Instead of competing for resources and territory, the new delegates were working together to solve problems that affected everyone. "The transformation has been remarkable," she later told a gathering of human colony leaders. "Species that hadn't spoken to each other in centuries are now sharing technology and resources. The Wanderers are helping the Shell Builders expand their mining operations. The current riders are teaching other species about energy manipulation. Even former council member species are adapting to cooperation instead of competition." The change had not happened overnight. The process began when human diplomats revealed the true scope of their preparations to the galaxy. It was not just the military capabilities or the hidden colonies that shocked the other species. It was the timeline. "Humans have been planning this for 300 years, Haywan explained to a mixed group of alien diplomats and human officials. She was the chief architect of the new cooperation protocols, a job that required understanding hundreds of different species' social structures and communication methods. She activated a historical display that showed the development of human strategy over the centuries. When humans first developed faster-than-light travel, they could have followed the same path as every other species: expand rapidly, claim territory, build an empire. Instead, they studied galactic history and made a different choice. The display showed early human exploration vessels, not conquest fleets but survey ships that spent years studying each system before making contact with any inhabitants. They learned that every galactic empire in history had eventually collapsed due to overextension and internal conflict. The hegemony, the First Alliance, the Crystal Dominion, all fell because they tried to control too much territory with too few resources. So humans chose a different approach, she continued. Instead of building an empire, they built a network. Instead of conquering worlds, they made friends with civilizations others had overlooked. Instead of demanding loyalty, they offered cooperation. This long-term thinking was what had made human success possible. While the Council focused on maintaining their current power structure, humans had been quietly preparing for the day when that structure would no longer serve the galaxy's needs. The preparation had been thorough. Jun Seo, now head of the new Galactic Exploration Initiative, revealed the scope of human scientific advancement during a presentation to the Reformed Council. Human science has been developing along different lines than Council research, he explained. While Council species competed for resources and guarded their discoveries, humans shared knowledge freely with their hidden allies. The result is technology that far exceeds anything the old Council possessed. He demonstrated some of the new capabilities: faster-than-light communication that could reach across the galaxy instantly, manufacturing systems that could build entire space stations from nothing but energy and raw materials, medical technology that could heal injuries that would have been fatal just decades earlier. But the most important discovery was not technological, Jun Seo continued. It was social. We learned that cooperation produces better results than competition. When species work together instead of against each other, everyone benefits. This principle was now being applied on a galactic scale. The new cooperative had established joint research projects that included dozens of species. Problems that had puzzled individual civilizations for centuries were being solved in months through collaborative effort. The transformation was most visible in the former problem, areas that the Council had struggled to control. The Void Sector, once considered too dangerous for colonization, had become a thriving region where humans, wanderers, and 3 newly discovered species were working together to harness the gravitational anomalies for energy production. The Outer Rim, which the Council had written off as worthless, was now home to thriving colonies built through cooperation between humans and the species they had helped liberate. The Keth were not just free from Valkyrian control, they were now partners in a mining operation that was more productive than anything the Council had ever achieved. Even more impressive were the discoveries being made by the joint exploration fleets. Working together, human and alien scientists were uncovering secrets of the galaxy that no single species could have found alone. We have located over 50 precursor facilities, reported Dr. Yunji during a council session. Each one contains technology and information that advances our understanding of the galaxy's history. But more importantly, they contain evidence that the precursors intended for their knowledge to be shared. The precursor sites were revealing a picture of the galaxy's past that contradicted everything the Council had believed. The ancient civilizations had not been conquered or destroyed. They had evolved beyond the need for physical existence, leaving their technology behind for younger species to discover when they were ready. The precursors faced the same choice that faces us now, Yunji explained. They could have used their advanced technology to control and dominate other species. Instead, they chose to transcend physical limitations and explore dimensions beyond normal space-time. They left their facilities as gifts for any species wise enough to choose cooperation over domination. This revelation had a profound effect on species that had joined the Council out of fear of being conquered. If the most advanced civilization in galactic history had chosen cooperation over control, perhaps that path truly was superior. The changes were not just political and technological, they were cultural. Species that had been isolated for centuries were sharing art, music, and philosophy. The current writers' energy symphonies were being translated into forms that physical species could appreciate. The shell builders' architectural principles were being applied to space stations and colony habitats. Human literature and philosophy were being adapted for alien mindsets. For the first time in galactic history, we have true cultural exchange, observed Haiwan during a conference on interspecies cooperation. Instead of one dominant culture imposing its values on others, we have hundreds of civilizations learning from each other. The former Council species were adapting to this new reality with varying degrees of success. Some, like the Vorten, embraced the changes enthusiastically. Their peaceful nature made them natural partners in the cooperative system. Others, like the Valkyrians, struggled with the loss of their slave labor, but eventually found that voluntary cooperation with their former subjects was actually more profitable. The Nexarians, who had led the old Council, went through the most dramatic transformation. Their rigid hierarchy gave way to a more flexible system that allowed for input from all levels of their society. The former Council leader, now just one representative among many, admitted that the change had been difficult but ultimately beneficial. "We spent so much energy maintaining control that we forgot to grow," he said during a private conversation with Sang Woo, Your species reminded us that true strength comes from helping others become strong, not from keeping them weak. As the first year of the new cooperative ended, the results spoke for themselves. Galactic trade had increased by 300%. Scientific discoveries were being made at an unprecedented rate. Conflicts between species had dropped to the lowest level in recorded history. The galaxy was more prosperous, more peaceful, and more creative than it had ever been. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The old council had been based on the assumption that species were naturally competitive and needed strong central control to prevent war. The new cooperative proved that cooperation was not just possible but preferable. "The moment has passed," Jiwoo said during the first anniversary celebration of the failed council ultimatum. She was older now, her hair touched with gray, but her eyes still held the same quiet determination that had faced down the council's threats. Not just the moment to contain humanity, but the moment when fear and control could dominate the galaxy. "We stand at the beginning of a new age, an age when every species can reach for the stars without asking permission from others." Around her, representatives from 200 worlds and species listened in dozens of languages. Above them, through the great windows of the chamber, the stars shone down on a galaxy that had learned to dream together. The human expansion that the council had,